Hold on, I gotta get a drink of coffee first.
Really need a cup of coffee. Pour me up a cup of Joe.
Very appropriate. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked. And for those of you on YouTube, welcome to another of what will probably continue to be video versions of our episodes. You actually get to see us.
Finally.
For those of you who do prefer listening to podcasts, don't worry, because we're going to continue releasing them as podcast episodes because they're long form. And I realize that some people like digesting this long form stuff, maybe in their car or while they're at work or whatever the fuck, you know? So that won't end. But for those of you who prefer YouTube, you now get an added bonus of seeing us. And so yes, Cranked and Ranked podcast. If you're new, it's a podcast where we rank rock and metal and sometimes other, as you saw last week, related shit. And today we're back into the world of metal. We're back into the world of thrash metal. We're wrapping up. This is the final of the big four that we're ranking today. We've done the other three now. Yeah. So now we're wrapping it up with one of my favorite bands of all time in my top five for sure. We're going to be doing the discography of Anthrax. And this is going to be a two-parter. So today is part one of the Anthrax ranking. And as usual, it's brought to you by me, Steven, or Old Head. And with me, as always, Mr. Eddie Sparxx. Hello, sir.
Yo,
you're getting your intros are getting really understated.
Yeah, I'm working on something. I'm working on something big.
Okay. You got to come up with like your own catchphrase.
Yeah.
You know, like
well, it's later, dude. That's my catchphrase, but it only ever happens like right at the end of the episode.
Well, you got to create one for the beginning of the episode too, and it can just, you know, you can just, why don't you just do that thing from Wayne's World 2? I'll be like, you know, hello, sir, and you'll go, hey!
I'm not Handsome Dan.
Anyway, so yes, welcome to this episode, and I'm excited about this. Now, for those of you who have watched shit on my YouTube channel, you do know that I already did a ranking of Anthrax probably 2 years ago, I think at this point, maybe more. But I have to say that coming from me, you're going to get something a little bit different, because those rankings that I did on my own, those were pretty much 90% personal taste. In Cranked and Ranked, I try to fit right in the middle, taking personal taste and taking some sort of objective view on the albums and how they fit in the discography and how they work in the story of the band, all of those things. So this is not going to be the exact same ranking. In fact, in some ways, it's going to be very different from the ranking that I did previously. Plus, it's just more fun because, you know, when Eddie's here, it's always a party. So, you know, as we normally do, we start off by talking about where we came on board with the artists that we're talking about. And I think I've told this story 3 or 4 different times in separate videos and podcasts since I started, but I'll briefly talk about it. So it was the beginning of 1990, I believe, and I was in the 6th grade, I think. You know, details are sketchy, and my old brain doesn't really have all the details down. But I just remember there was a girl in my math class. I don't really remember her name, unfortunately, but she was a girl who was into rock and roll and metal and stuff like that. And so was I, but I was very new. So 6th grade, like I think I was still, into, Guns N' Roses and I was really into Faith No More in the sixth
Yeah.
grade. So I was getting into heavier stuff and, branching out. And one day she shows up and she lets me borrow 2 albums on cassette. The first one was the debut album from Trickster, which at the time I didn't give 2 shits about. I like it more now because I like that 80s cheese rock kind of shit, which they did. And then the other one was State of Euphoria.
That's a jump too in style. Like those are polar opposites.
I almost feel like I don't know if those were hers or if she borrowed them from somebody. But if you look at the artwork of both of those, they seem like they should be similar because they both have very cartoonish looking, covers. But needless to say, I put on State of Euphoria and my mind was blown. Like it's like fucking Marvin Berry called me up on the phone and he's like, that new sound you're looking for? And
listen to this. Yeah.
It was thrash metal. I'd never heard anything quite like it. And that's been my thing ever since, just the sound of that. So whenever I think of thrash metal, I think of State of Euphoria and Anthrax. And then very quickly, I became a very huge Anthrax fan, and that has lasted for the rest of my life. And I'm still a very huge fan today. Where did you come on board with Anthrax?
Mine was getting into this band was a very gradual process for me. Because I was deep into Metallica. I dabbled in some Megadeth when I first started hearing about all the big 4 bands. And then I got really into Slayer. And then I was kind of spoilt by how heavy Slayer was for quite some time. So I was kind of like, it wasn't so much that anything lighter than Slayer was wimpy. I was just deep into that really heavy thing at the time. And then eventually Megadeth really caught my ear and I got deep into them. But for me, Anthrax, they have a distinctly different, East Coast kind of vibe. So that took a little while to click with me because I was more into the Californian bands. But eventually,
it's weird though when you think about it, because you would think that if you were dividing up bands and you would say one of these bands has a more lighthearted approach, you would think that'd be the California band, not the New York band.
But that's my thing. Like I was like semi into Anthrax. Like everything I'd heard I'd liked, but I'd not got to the point of a deep dive. Although I will say I'd heard Indians from Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock at the time, and Madhouse is in GTA Vice City. So I knew those two, and I knew they were fucking great songs.
Yeah.
Then I saw them live supporting Slayer, and
when was this?
This was 6 years ago. So I just started college, November 2015, and I remember being really on edge. This is kind of a dark turn to this, but I remember being really on edge the whole time, because like the Eagles of Death Metal tragedy had happened days before. And like, that massive terror attack, awful thing happened. But I distinctly remember walking in and the lights had projected the French flag onto the curtain when I walked in. So that image is always kind of burned into my like memories of it. And I walked in and I was waiting, for Slayer to come on. I was like, oh, cool. I get to see 2 of the big 4 in one night. Then Anthrax hit the stage. And I got to say, like, Anthrax kind of worked the crowd better than Slayer did. Like, what I remember of it, like, more, because I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm seeing Slayer. Then Anthrax hit the stage first, and I was like, oh, shit, I have neglected these guys terribly. So I went home, and I'd actually picked up a couple cassettes, funnily enough, from like a little tiny record shop. It sold like miscellaneous things like old games, old CDs and stuff, but they had a tape shelf, and Persistence of Time and Attack of the Killer Bees were on cassette, and I was like, well, I can't walk out of here being me without that. So I got it, and I brought it home and I put Persistence of Time on, and I thought, holy shit, this is awesome. You know,
Yeah,
so
that's a good first album to hear of theirs, really.
well, that's the thing. I'd heard all of Among the Living, and I thought it was great.
Oh,
But
okay. All right. All right.
but yeah, for me, it was just like every couple years I'd hear a whole Anthrax album and think, oh shit, that's good.
Yeah.
And then another couple years would happen, and then I'd be like, oh my god, this one too. Now I've it's been a gradual process, but I have enjoyed every single second of my very on and off dalliance with Anthrax.
Sweet. Cool. Well, I guess, it'll be it, as it is sometimes with our rankings, it's interesting because I've kind of like lived the Anthrax discography starting with Persistence of Time. When I first got into them, Persistence of Time was the new album.
Yeah.
So from that point on, I kind of got to go for the ride of what they were doing. Whereas you came in on board, I guess at that point, worship music had already been out and Joey was already back in the band.
Yeah.
So you caught on at that point. So this will be an interesting ranking for sure. So without further ado, I say that every time. And I don't, it's just, there's those certain sayings that people say and you just always say those sayings.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's just in your brain and it comes out and it's like, well, why is that there? Why can't I think of a better way to say that? Anyway, I don't know. It's just it's just strange how some sayings become a thing that you say.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm sorry about that. That won't be the last tangent, I'm sure, of weirdness. But let's go ahead and start with our ranking. So today is going to be, we're doing the 12 full-length studio albums.
Yeah.
So we're not doing Attack of the Killer Bees, unfortunately, which I love, but that's a compilation. And then we're not doing any EPs. It's literally just the 12 full-length studio albums. So today is going to be the bottom 6, 12 down to 7, and then we'll wrap it up next time with the top 6. So let's just get right on it with Mr. Edward Sparxx and his number 12, the bottom of the barrel of Anthrax albums.
Okay, so my bottom of the barrel Anthrax album is The Greater of Two Evils.
Okay. Covers album. Well, I mean, not covers. Covers of their own songs.
It's the John Bush era, playing a big old set of Belladonna and Turbine era songs.
Yeah.
I ain't doing a track by track for this one because I would just be retreading the exact same songs.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I'm not really a fan of bands retreading their own material, like save for maybe a song or two with a big change, or maybe to improve on like a demo quality recording or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'll give it to them that you get to hear a set list of like classic era, quote unquote classic era songs with John Bush on vocals.
Yeah.
The performances are great, but the whole time I'm thinking I'd rather just hear the originals. But if this were a live album, totally different story, because then you would have an in the moment, really cool crossover kind of show where the John Bush era like lineup doesn't play any John Bush songs and they do a old school set. Like that would be cool, but I'm just not a re-recorded from the ground up kind of guy. Whenever if ever it comes on shuffle and it's like a re-recording, I'm like, skip. Like but yeah, that's my bottom. That's my bottom pick.
Also my bottom. Let's do it.
Knew it.
Okay. So we matched up for our number 12, but if anyone knows anything about me, you would have known that this album would have come in last. Just because not only do I not really, most of the time I don't really enjoy covers albums, but it's even worse when it's just full-on re-recordings of songs that are already great. I get the point of this album. I understand, and I understand it was, it's fun. And if you're one of those people that prefers John Bush over Joey Belladonna, it's probably great. But I have to say that out of all of these albums, the other 11 albums, I love these albums. This is the only one. Like, I have a crazy Anthrax collection of vinyl and other shit. I
can tell.
I will never buy this album. I will
Wow.
never buy it. It is really hard to get through for me. The songs just, they've lost so much of their energy in these versions.
Yeah.
And John Bush can't sing Joey Belladonna songs. I'm sorry. And I mean, he can, technically, he can sing them and it's fine. I have no problem with John Bush. I like John Bush's voice.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I've always had a problem with is him doing older Anthrax songs. I remember when he first joined the band and they did a lot of older songs as well, and I was always like, well, hopefully one day they just stop doing those. But it went the other way around, where they started doing more of those and less John Bush songs.
Yeah.
And my biggest gripe with John Bush is that the tone of his voice is great. He has his own unique sound, and it's very pleasing. My problem with him vocally is that a lot of times he has trouble hitting the right notes, so he's flat or sharp a lot, especially live, and you can see him struggling. Even with some of his own songs live, you'll see him struggling to sing the songs that he sings. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly he pushed himself to his limits in the studio, and he can't. He can do a good enough job live where it doesn't completely sound like shit. But
it's not realistically sustainable night after night.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that Joey Belladonna is an amazing vocalist.
Yeah.
If you prefer John Bush, that is literally just an opinion. One's a great vocalist, one's a good vocalist who has his own style and is very enjoyable. And hearing him do these songs every time, I just go, John, you're great, but no, this is not, it's going to be a no from me, dog. I never want to listen to this. And I listened to it again for this episode, and it hasn't gotten any better. And some of the songs, like, they play them at a slightly slower tempo. And I know that they're older dudes. Well, this was in 2004, but I mean, I know that they're older dudes, but I don't know. It's just, it's hard for me to do this part, because they're one of my favorite bands ever. And once we get over this album, my demeanor is going to change a lot. Even with all of the John Bush era stuff, because I'm a fan of all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But this is
the bummer.
It's a bummer of an album. But I get it. It was fun. It was fun to do. Some fans really enjoy it, and I'm not gonna say that they're wrong for enjoying it. I'm just gonna say that I absolutely do not enjoy it. So that's why it's my number 12. So quickly moving on, so we can get into positive land, although I don't know how positive you're going to be about all of these albums, but I for sure am going to be. So let's move on to number 11.
Well, I want to state that this is, from my research, a very controversial choice, but I will say I have a lot of positives on the flip side. There are actually, when I look at the list of albums I have before me, there is very little genuinely bad moves I can see. Like, you get the odd thing here or there. It's like, why'd they do that? But aside from that, I'm a lot more subjective than you when it comes to our rankings. And so for me, my number 11 from 2011 is Worship Music.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah. So this one, to me, I was kind of going into it expecting one thing, and I kind of came out of it having had another. And the way it opens, like, I'd seen people talking about it as if it was a thrash record. You know, they would say they returned to thrash. Belladonna's back. They're playing skank beats again, and they're doing all the fast shit. And when in
Yeah.
actual fact, there's only 2 songs on here that I would genuinely call a thrash song. The rest of it's kind of like in the middle of the Belladonna thrash kind of thing and the grungy John Bush kind of thing. They kind of meet in the middle and do this modern, I want to say modern radio accessible metal kind of thing, even though there are moments where they step away from that. But
yeah. I mean, it's important you have to remember too that the bulk of this album was created with a completely different vocalist in mind.
Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
that's also part of it.
That's the thing. Like, looking at it now in retrospect, maybe this album will grow on me. So you get Worship, which is just a cool intro track. Then Earth on Hell, ripping thrash opener. You know, it's even got fucking blast beats in it. The great opener, set the bar really high right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Then you get The Devil You Know, a groovy rocker. Like I say, feels like a John Bush type track which is literally what I suppose you would say, you know, Belladonna on top of it. Then you get Fight Until You Can't, strongest song on here in my opinion. Fucking killer thrash riffs in it. I asked you whether or not they had like repurposed an old riff or something because it sounded so authentically classic. This song's sick. I'm Alive. Now, the riff in this song reminds me of Kein Lust by Rammstein. It's the same kind of pattern. They play like a slightly different variation on it, but unfortunately at this point the album had already kind of peaked for me, and I was ready for another thrash one, and another thrash one didn't really come because the rest of the album goes down a much more middle of the road melodic metal kind of route, which, you know, for some, go for it. But yeah, first you get the Hymn 1, which is a little strings interlude, which is cool. Now In the End is very inspired by their modern peers. Like, when I think back to 2011, this was that sound, you know, those big choruses where they've kind of got the, I kind of call it Alter Bridge syndrome, where every band heard Alter Bridge and was like, that's really cool. But because due to the nature of modern music and how accessible stuff is, when everybody heard Alter Bridge, they do an Alter Bridge-esque thing, and it sounds exactly like every other thing for me.
So here's where I've saved myself. I don't know what Alter Bridge sounds like. Number one, that's one of the worst band names I've ever heard in my entire life. Is it an altar or is it a bridge? They might as well have called themselves Asking Alexandra's Bridge or whatever. It's like, what is the thing with these awful band names these days? Like,
that's the thing. I will, like, musically, Alter Bridge are really good, but I feel like
is that X Creed? Is that band?
Yeah, but they stepped their game up. Like,
okay. I mean, I've never heard him, so I don't know.
That's the thing. Miles Kennedy, killer vocalist. I find that a lot of bands.
Oh, is he that guy that sings with Slash sometimes? Oh, okay. I literally know nothing about that band, so now I'm learning right now on the Anthrax episode.
This is the thing for me personally. I really like Alter Bridge and what they do, but when I hear so many modern hard rock bands now, they're all doing Alter Bridge with a different singer.
Interesting.
And it can kind of, to me, it feels like a textbook example of doing that thing that Phil Anselmo talked about. Like, back in the day, we would have 10 influences, and bands these days only take like 2. And it's like, that's what set Pan fucking Terra apart from all the other bands. And it's like, I totally see what he's talking about, because you get bands that'll say, what if we do an alter bridge type thing, but have a soul singer over it, or a punk singer over it? Because that's what I hear in a lot of modern. Granted, it shows they're influential, but I could be thinking.
Could it just
of a
be that
different.
it's all just watered down metal, and that's why it all sounds the same? Because I've heard a lot of these bands, and the problem that a lot of them have for me is that it sounds uninspired, watered down metal.
They go a little bit too reliant on the radio rock kind of format, like it.
Got it.
But Alter Bridge, now that they're cool in my book, but it's kind of the glut of bands that came in the wake that I kind of call the Alter Bridge syndrome.
This is an interesting perspective on this, because like I don't listen to a shitload of modern hard rock and metal bands, and the little that I do hear, clearly I don't like. So when in this particular case, like, I thought, In the End is an amazing song to me, but I don't have anything. It doesn't immediately go, oh, they clearly were listening to this band, which sometimes that does happen. Sometimes I can clearly hear an influence on something, but in this case, it just totally wasn't there for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, I want to state, I love Anthrax. I like Alter Bridge. I think that both bands incredibly talented. I just think that at this point in music, I was hearing a lot of modern bands doing this, and I think I kind of made that association where I was like,
yeah.
It kind of, it's kind of like that meme of I can't remember what show it's from, but it's the old dude dressed as a kid, and he's like, "Hey, fellow kids," and that's even that may not even be what they were kind of going for, but for me, this album has
knowing them, especially knowing Charlie Benante, like, he listens to a whole lot of different shit.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that they were probably real tight with some of those bands, maybe even Alter Bridge, and so those kind of influences, we've talked about this before, where like, sometimes bands are just influenced with the music that's going on around them. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to rip anybody off. It's just, you start to really get into this. Oh, this is great. And then it comes out in your songwriting, because honestly, if what you're currently being influenced by is atmospheric goth metal, and then you come back to your album and you're like, well, we got to make this thrash by the book because we're a thrash metal band, then that to me is worse than selling out. Like, that is literally that's selling out to what you think your fan base expects, as opposed to you as a band being honest with who you are. And that's one thing that I will have to say about Anthrax and a lot of my favorite bands, is that they're always bands where I feel like they just kind of did what they felt, whether or not it made anybody happy, or whether or not it was borrowing from whatever was going on at the time. I'm not trying to make excuses for Anthrax on this particular album, because I do agree, like, one of my big gripes about this album at the time was that it sounded too like they were trying to cross over to the young peeps at the same time.
Yeah, that's my kind of big thing with it, is that some of the parts on it feel very, they heard some metalcore and they maybe had a vocal harmony here or there that you would hear from those sort of bands. And the one thing that Charlie and Scott kept saying in every interview for a new album I would hear, starting with like the early 2000s, they were obsessed with talking about blast beats. Like, they thought that's what made them a cool metal band again. So every single interview would be like, this is like the heaviest thing we've done. We've got blast beats on it. I'm like, shut the fuck up about blast beats. You don't need them. The songs that they have blast beats on, they're unnecessary. Most of the time, most people don't do blast beats the right way. Charlie does it good because he's an amazing drummer. But to me, they always stick out like a sore thumb. Like, why is that there? So there absolutely was an element of them
trying to figure out how to fit in with everything, with the fans that they had, with the music that they were currently into. You know, it's got to be fucking tough being a big ass band that everyone's, you know, gonna put your shit under the microscope like this.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I think for me, this album, I was kind of told it was, dude, this is classic Anthrax. You got to check out this. It sounds just like Among the Living, and it's like, no, it doesn't. No,
it doesn't.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I feel like when it happened, you just had Belladonna fanboys were like, oh my god, he's back. That would be like,
I was one of them.
that would be like if all of a sudden David Tennant was the Doctor again for me. Like I would go nuts. I would go crazy. But it can feel a little ham-fisted at times. Hymn 2 is a cool snare interlude. Judas Priest, not to be confused with the band, though from what I know it is dedicated to him.
Yeah.
Crawl, standard 2011 slow modern metal track. The Constant has some cool sleazy riffage, but again, it just feels a little bit generic for me when I come to Anthrax. Because that's the thing, I either come to Anthrax for thrash or I come to them for groove. And the thing is, this has such an equal measure that it almost cancels each other out, you know?
Yeah.
So like, for me, that's why that I'm probably gonna take the strongest tracks from Worship Music and For All Kings and just make a really cool, short, concise, ultimate thrasher with what I can piece together from those. Where was I? Revolution Screams has some cool parts in it. This album started real strong, but my interest began to wane when it got a little bit too, you know, appeal to the younger crowd kind of at points, because for me it came off very trendy for the time, middle of the road modern metal. Like, but there is an EP's worth of gnarly shit on this album, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. I love hearing this like different perspective on these things, because like I have my small gripes about that album, like I said earlier, but that's not my number 11. My number 11 is the 1998 album Volume 8, The Threat Is Real. This hasn't changed. I believe this was dead last in my old ranking that I did. And for the same old reasons, so I'm going to go back into them. For those of you who've heard them before, I'm sorry. This album to me is the most inconsistent album they did. It doesn't seem like a cohesive thing. It's got a lot of songs. Half of the songs are really fucking good. Like, there are some songs that I absolutely love on this album, and then the other ones are ones that are not quite there. And I don't know what it is that could have, I think probably because they were sticking so much with trying to be more, it's hard to explain what it is. It's like, it's like there's it's an aggressive quality while still trying to be melodic, but it feels like they overplay their hand, I guess. Is that a term? It's kind of a heavy-handed album, and they could have easily cut out like a handful of tracks and made it shorter, or just worked a little longer on beefing up some of these songs, because it's like there's not enough meat in some of these songs. They're heavy and they've got cool riffs, but then you walk away with that being the only thing, you know. And it just feels like it's kind of all over the place. And it's also it's a weird album for the time too, because it's the only, well, I guess it's not the only one, but it's one of the two where they didn't really have a full lineup of the band. They've got other people playing leads, like the Paul Crook. Paul Crook was the guy that actually toured with Anthrax as their touring guitar player from like 95 to the early 2000s. And he plays some leads on this. Obviously, like Charlie and Scott, and I think Dimebag's on a song or two on here. And I like this. I feel the way about Volume 8 that you were just talking about worship music, where I feel like I could make like a 6-song killer fucking album out of this.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's not bad. It's got a good energy to it, but it's like comparing it to all of the other albums that Anthrax has done, this is the one where I find myself kind of checking my watch, like, how long has this been on? Like,
Yeah, because it's like
it's
an hour in length, isn't it? It's one of the longest ones.
I believe so. And then not only that, like I think a version you get now, like on the internet, I think it's got extra songs on it too.
Yeah.
Like cover songs and shit. But yeah, it's a good album, but it to me it feels the most like they were kind of transitioning. Like I didn't really know where to go, and I absolutely get it because they had been on Elektra and gotten kicked off Elektra,
Yeah.
and they were kind of in this limbo period where it's like not only was the band in limbo, but like metal in general in 1998, like it was Korn and things like that. And I can understand it being a really tough time and being like, well, where the fuck do we fit in here? And but I hear a lot of that when I hear the album. Although there's some cool shit on it, but not enough to move it up the ranks at all. So that's why it's my number 11.
Cool. My number 10 is For All Kings.
Oh, all right. You just knock these two recent albums
Yeah.
to the end.
It was a tricky thing for me to do because I was kind of like, I don't want to be that. See, that's the distinction I made at the start. I'm not shitting on these, but it's that I like everything else just that little bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, you Gotta Believe is a cool thrash groove opener. A Monster at the End is a chuggy good one. For All Kings, Joey gets to show off his vocals. This album he gets more melodic stuff to play around with, so he can really show off his vocals in a way that he was intended to sing them. Breathing Lightning is an anthemic song, really cool. Suzerain, is it Suzerain?
Suzerain. I don't even know what it fucking means, but I love that song.
Cool. I just didn't want to be the only. I didn't want to be the only one. Yeah, it's a cool track. Evil Twin has Benante doing the Anthrax beat, leading with the snare, the kapu 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 kapu. There's an awesome Slayer-esque breakdown in there too, with that like Dave Lombardo beat and the yeah. Blood Eagle Wings is a big sprawling track. Now here's where things kicked up a notch for me, because the reason I put this album above worship music is that I went into this expecting it to be the same as worship music, and then towards the end they really kick up the intensity with the thrashiness of these last few tracks for the most part. Defend Avenge, I was very impressed by this track, like really groovy, really heavy, cool thrashy one. All of Them Thieves, this one's awesome too, caught me off guard. This Battle Chose Us is all right, but Zero Tolerance, full on thrash outro song. Like, had these albums had a bit more of that on it, they would be higher. But
yeah,
and it's not so much that I want every song to be a thrash song, but I'd like an album of like 10 plus tracks from the big four of thrash band. When they say they're gonna do a thrash thing, I'd like for more than 2 songs to be thrash songs.
Well, they didn't on on this particular album.
I suppose it's kind of the media and the fan base's fault for hyping it up wrong.
I mean, if you could literally, the exact thing that you're saying, you could put that on all of the recent albums by Megadeth and Metallica.
You have a fair point.
They've all just become metal bands. And all the people that are like, it's a return to thrash, they're always talking about 1 or 2 tracks, or at best just a few riffs here and there. So that's probably why it doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I would prefer that. I love thrash metal, but I love old school thrash metal. And when these bands branch out and do other things, now that they're older, I'm like, I kind of like this better because I feel like it's more honest. And you know, there are certain bands, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to piss people off, that put out new albums, and it's literally just them going through the motions and doing the same shit because they're supposed to be doing thrash. And to me, I just go, great job, guys. You know, but that's just me as a fan. You know,
there's only so many times you could go.
yeah, things like that.
But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I say, it doesn't really take me to the breakneck headbanging mood of the 80s or the bouncy groove of the Bush era. But you know, I think with time these will grow on me, and I'll kind of, you know, not so much learn to love them, but might analyze them more in the way that they were kind of intended.
Yeah, and just remember, when the new Anthrax album comes, which hopefully will be in 2022, in interviews they are saying it's very angry and very aggressive, but don't let them fool you. Because it will have some of that on it, and then probably some of it. I mean, if they pull out a full-on aggressive album that doesn't let up, I'm gonna be like, well, good on you, I guess. You know, because you know, at this point they've earned it. Like, if they want to have fun and be fast and aggressive for an album, great. Let's hear what you can do.
And with the last 2 years, I don't think anyone will blame them.
No, not at all. Cool. Well, then let's move on to my number 10, which I like how this worked out, because we're literally going to go all the way to the complete other end of their discography. And my number 10 is Fistful of Metal from 1984.
Okay.
I know this was probably a controversial placement for people that have Venom patches on their battle vests, I guess. I don't know. Every time, like, there's the Anthrax discussion, like, you know, I prefer John Bush, I prefer Joey Belladonna. Cool. There's always that one dude that's like, I like Fistful of Metal. And we're all like, once again, we're very proud of you. Anyway, so let me first off, like, obviously this is a very important album. It's the debut Anthrax album. The only one that has Neil Turbin on vocals. I honestly don't have any problem with Neil Turbin's vocals. I've always thought he sounds a little bit like a cross between Paul Stanley and Bruce Dickinson. Like, if you put those two dudes together, he kind of sounds, because sometimes he sounds like Paul Stanley to me in some of his delivery. And and there's classic songs on here. You know, I love Metal Thrashing Mad. I prefer it when Joey Belladonna sings it, but you know, I feel like if I had heard this album when it came out and was really into it, I'd probably feel differently about it. But once again, I think that would be a personal choice. Just listening to it as an Anthrax album, it doesn't sound like an Anthrax album. It's got some Anthraxy songs. It's got a whole bunch of songs that sound like a bunch of different bands.
Well, that's the distinction I kind of make with this album, is that even though, like, the term thrashing is in one of the tracks, I would call this more of a speed metal album than it is a thrash metal album, because like it's got the, you know, it's got the speed obviously, but it's a lot more melodic and new wave of British heavy metal influenced in its you know, in its guitar work. It's Maiden on crack. So like when you get to the next album, that's when I would say they start doing thrash proper. So and then
and also this is the only album that has Dan Milker on bass. Who would later go on and do Nuclear Assault and Brutal Truth, and you know, you name it. Like, he's been involved in a lot of cool shit. But yeah, this is a classic album, and it's fun to put on when I want to have that 80s metal sound. Because it sounds exactly like, you could just say 80s metal and play this album, I'd be like, that sounds like it. And it's a fun album. It's got some cool shit on it, and as an Anthrax fan, it's very enjoyable to me because I like to hear where they started. But I think we've had this discussion before about the the big four debut albums, like this is my least favorite of the big four debut albums. I'll go to the other three before I'll go to Fistful of Metal, which is funny because Anthrax is one of my favorite bands, but this one just doesn't give me what I want from Anthrax. It's more of a, I got to be in the mood for this particular thing. If I'm in the mood for Anthrax, I don't go to this album, but it's great. At this point, it's a piece of history and perfectly enjoyable album. And that's really all I have to say. That's my number 10.
That's all I have to say about that. Cool. My number 9 is Stomp 442.
Okay. This is not controversial. I think a lot of people don't like this album.
Well, that's the thing. I like it, but I think it has an issue, and that is it kind of evolved from the previous album the wrong way. So it kind of like it was at a fork in the road, and it went down the other path it perhaps maybe could have to make it better. And I think that comes down to it kind of sticks to one vibe. It has its down-tuned driving rocker post-grunge aesthetic, and then it rarely deviates from that all the way through. So you get Random Acts of Senseless Violence, groovy opener. Fueled is a fun song. That is a hard rocking track. King Sized, the riffage is killer. Riding Shotgun, again, driving kind of song, up tempo blast of mid-90s hard rock. Perpetual Motion, it's at this point, at the time of writing this, I feel as though this album has a vibe and it's not deviating far from many of the other tracks, like I said. In a Zone, now there is some Pantera influence on this one, and is that one of the tracks where Dime plays guitar?
Does he play guitar on Stomp 442? I'm not sure.
I think he does on one.
It might be that then.
It might be. Yeah.
I know that as far as I know, a lot of the leads once again are Charlie and then some by Paul Crook, who would end up being their touring guitar player.
Yeah.
There might be a Dimebag on there.
Yeah. Dime actually did a lot of guest solos on a lot of albums. Like there's one on a Nickelback album.
Yeah. That's the thing that like I always thought was really funny, is that so many people jump on Nickelback as being this horrible band. Yeah. And I always wanted to like remind everybody, hey, your favorite bands are probably friends with them. And they probably think they're fine. It's like, because that's the thing I've heard is like all these bands, they're all apparently Nickelback are cool dudes. They're all friends with them.
Well, there's that part in that episode of Metal Evolution where, Jerry Cantrell walks out on stage and does a song with Nickelback. And it's like, if it, in my eyes, if Jerry says something's okay, I'm fine with it.
Once again, I know so little Nickelback. My opinion, I'm never going to jump on the bandwagon opinion of like, they're fucking awful, because I think I've heard 3 songs. Yeah. So I can't say much.
I think it's...
Anyway, back to Stomp.
It's popular to hate them because they're popular, but that's
never been me. So
yeah. But yeah, anyway, where was I? We got Nothing, which is post grungy kind of track. Now
that one's always been interesting to me because it's in a major key.
Yeah,
like the riff is very, not all of it, but like that main riff, if you play it in a different way, it's like a pop punk riff.
Yeah.
The chord progression anyway.
That's the interesting thing about this album, is that it found something else they could do. It just did a little bit much of it. And you get to American Pompeii now here, and again, it's not as egregious as the last time I mentioned it, because the last time I mentioned this analogy, I was talking about Sonic Boom by Kiss. This is not this is not that bad, but I do get a certain manly reality TV show about cars and or fast food joint vibes from some of the moments on this record. Like I'm literally waiting for Guy Fieri to jump out and say, diners, drive-ins, and dives. Yeah. But that's just how I would describe this album. You know, it's very meat and potatoes. You could learn the riffs on this album real easy, like accessible to guys that just want riffs. Drop the ball. There's some new metal edge to this one, and you know the breakdown in the middle of that is noise. Tester, a rather up-tempo bad boy, and Bear is a heartfelt acoustic ballad at the end of this very driving album. It's a cool album,
Yeah,
but it has its flaws, and that's why for me it sits down here.
this is I love these kind of rankings because like we really only matched up with the last one. All right, so my number 9. Once again, I'm staying in the relatively the same area, at least with you this time. My number 9 is the 2003 album We've Come For You All. Okay. The last with John Bush on vocals, and the first with Rob Caggiano on guitar, who was in that band for 3 albums worth, I guess technically. No, two albums worth. Fuck, I don't know. Anyway, he plays on We've Come For You All. And so this one ends up in the second half at number 9, mostly because of the amount of songs that aren't that great.
Yeah.
Because overall, the album sounds really good. Production-wise, this album sounds really good. And it's got some amazing tracks on it. So, especially when you're talking about what's the opening track on We've Come For You All? It's What Doesn't Die.
Yeah.
That's a really great opener. And then it's got shit like Superhero and Safe Home and a lot of these really, to me, like really well written songs.
Yeah. And
then especially in the second half of the album, there are songs that are real kind of weak and has nothing to do with the performances, because the performances are all great. It's all songwriting wise that turns me off. And it's only because there are some songs that are so great and the other ones are so that it's like, to me, it's a very uneven album. And I just want more out of it every time I listen to it. And over the years, I've gone back several times to re-listen to it and listen to the tracks that I think are underwhelming, and they just remain underwhelming. And like I said before, I made that gripe about the unnecessary blast beats. Everyone's always just like, man, Black Dahlia is such a fucking great song. I'm like, is it really? It's not really.
They do feel pretty thrown in.
And so it's just an unnecessary blast beat, and then the chorus is just Black Dahlia is in my head. Black Dahlia is in my head. I'm like, all right. I mean the songs. I mean, as an album listening to it, I don't skip it because it's still a good song. But comparatively speaking to other stuff they've done, I'm all like, come on, man. It's like, and there's a few songs like that where I just go, it's not really that well written. But some of them are. Some of them are great, and you even get Mr. Keanu Reeves in the music video for Safe Home, and how fucking cool is that? That's awesome. I mean, yeah, this is it's pre John Wick, but post Matrix. So he was a celebrity. So, but that's cool. But yeah, so I like things about this album a lot. I like the album cover, very cool. I believe the comic book artist Alex Ross, I think he's done every cover since then. I think he did Worship Music and he did For All Kings. And I like all of those album covers. And so cool, stick with the guy. It's like the guy that Maiden stuck with for a really long time. Like that guy, all of his album covers are fucking great.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overall as an album, like it ends up here just because like I said, the unevenness of like it sounds like a cohesive album and everything sounds great, but it just has too many of those moments where I go, man, this song, they should have taken a few more passes at it, or added a different part, or worked on that chorus a little bit, because there's just some weak moments here. But it's still a fucking solid album. Like, it's like I can't, all my complaints are just me trying to explain my ranking. because normally if somebody said, you want to listen to We've Come For You All, I'd be like, fuck yeah. It's
yeah.
But here in this context, I gotta go, what are the things that I can nitpick about? And so the nitpicking, the amount of nitpicking ended up putting it here at number 9.
Cool.
Moving on to our number 8.
Cool. So my number 8 is Volume 8, The Thread Is Real. I was waiting for you to say something, but you were clearly drinking. Yeah.
What was I?
I don't know. You just looked like you were going to say something. You were nodding along,
I was there was a part of me in my head that I thought you were going to say Volume 8, The Thread Is Real.
Oh, okay. Hang on. My number 8 is Volume 8, The Thread Is Real.
There you go.
So this one, to me, sits above Stomp 442 for one reason, and that is it's more adventurous. There is a lot more risk-taking going on. There's wildly different songs on it. Sure, that might sacrifice a little bit of cohesion, but on the flip side, it's sonically a roller coaster. So with that, you got Crush, which is this busy chunk of percussive groove metal perfection. Like, that is a really cool song.
Great song. I think the first like 3 tracks on this album are fucking killer. Like, it starts off really strong.
Yeah, like you get Catharsis, which is kind of a funky, hard rocking 90s Anthrax type thing. Yeah. Inside Out, fuck me, Inside Out is a groovy song. P&V, stomping hard rocker. 604 is this like really fast, short, concise punk track. Then you get Toast to the Extras, which is this like southern rock kind of thing, which is like, holy fuck, where did that come from? And I like that because it kind of did a similar thing to what RV does on Angel Dust, where it's like so out of the fucking blue, but I kind of like what it does at the same time.
It is one of those tracks by them, though, that I like the idea of it more than I like the actual song. Like, yeah. I wish they had taken that style and done a better song with it, but it is what it is.
But then you get Born Again Idiot, which sounds like just a punkier Pantera at points. And, the slide-in guitar riffs in that. Killer track. Killing Box is a cool song. Harm's Way. The opening line to Harm's Way, like, here comes the biggest asshole the world has ever seen. It should play whenever I see someone I don't like. And I put here in my on my notes, Hogtied, and then like a big line of ellipsis dots, and then I put, oh yeah, this was during the nu metal era, wasn't it? Then you get Big Fat, which is a big fat groover. Cup of Joe is a silly, fun, short thingy. Alpha Male is totally 90s alt rock through a metal rig. Stealing from a Thief, love this song. Big vocals, big slow groovy chord progression. Pieces could have been a mid-90s Stone Temple Pilots track. There's, again, like I say, this album is just way more adventurous than its predecessor. I could see that, yeah. Even if it is a little bit, it also there was a vibe around Stomp 442. Like they didn't use the logo, their classic logo, because the company told them not to, and I looked into, I think there was it was an interview with Charlie Benante, and he said something along the lines of, I have fond memories of Volume 8 because we had more freedom, whereas Stomp 442 was very by the numbers kind of. So he didn't like that one as much, and I can kind of hear that. So yeah, Volume 8 is number 8 in a nice little turn of events there.
I feel like you go through the songs. I was like, maybe I was a little harsh on that album, but I'm still happy with where I put it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, I'm fans of all of these albums, minus Greater of Two Evils. But now I'm gonna touch on one you already talked about. My number 8 is Worship Music from 2011.
Cool.
Now there was a big buildup to this album for me, because I never got to get a brand new Joey Belladonna album when I first became a fan. Like, I got into them, and I think it was probably right after Persistence of Time had come out. So of course I got, Attack of the Killer Bees, that's great and all, but I had waited, however many years it was between that and Worship Music, and all of a sudden, I get a new Joey Belladonna Anthrax album. So I was very excited about it. And I remember going to see, like, I think it was before this album came out, but when they did the Big Four concerts, and I went to go see, like, the live broadcast in the theater, which I think I may have talked about before, because I always like to point out that Dave Mustaine completely re-recorded his vocals on the DVD version.
Yeah.
But I just was so excited to see Anthrax up there with Joey. Like, and I know they had already done a tour, like a reunion tour with Dan Spitz, a few years prior, but I didn't get to see that. And, this was just cool. I was very happy that they were back together. So when this album came out, it was a big deal. And then I think the first song they released was Fight 'Em Till You Can't. And I was like, this is fucking cool. Great song. So I was really excited about this when it came out. But I told you, like, my gripe about the album when it came out was I liked a lot of the songs a lot immediately. And I loved Joey's performance. But I felt like they were trying to cater to a lot of different people at the same time with the album. And on top of that, like, some of it does feel like music that wasn't written for Joey. And that's because we can speak his name. Dan Nelson was supposed to be the vocalist at one point. And it's so weird, that whole thing with Dan Nelson, because I remember when they announced that Dan Nelson was their vocalist, and then I don't know if they put it out there or somebody on the internet, early days of YouTube, put out a video of a live performance that had Dan Nelson doing songs. And I just went, oh no. I was just like, no, what are they doing? So I was prepared at that point to just sever my ties with Anthrax altogether and just be like, you guys have fun, but I don't know what the fuck you're doing with this dude. And so I wasn't on board. And all the stories that you hear, like, whenever you hear an interview when they talk about Dan Nelson, it's always the most tiptoeing around the issue. It's always like, that was a difficult time, like, for everybody. And then and I don't even think they will say his name. It's just like, so I'm like, there's a part of me that goes, who's the asshole here? Was Dan Nelson the asshole, or is Scott Ian or Charlie Benante, are they the assholes? Or maybe both. Maybe everybody's an asshole in this particular thing. You hear varying reports on all of those things. But it was just interesting to me. All of a sudden, they just went, fuck that guy. And as far as I know, they had recorded all of the vocals for this album.
Oh, shit.
And that's what I've heard anyway. And then they got rid of all the vocals. Originally, I think they were trying to get John Bush to come back to sing on this album. And he came back for a few concerts, and he said, I'm not gonna do this shit anymore. Which I think that was a good choice, because he got to go back to Armored Saint full time. And I think I like him in Armored Saint. I liked him in Anthrax too, but it just seemed like this was a change that needed to happen. And so of course they go to Joey, and it's almost like that was the only option. I don't know if that was the only option they had or the best option they had. And the big four shows maybe were a catalyst in that whole thing happening. But either way, whatever differences they had between them, they had to squash those and just be like, oh, look, we're going to be in a band together again, which I don't know the ins and outs of how they get along with each other. But as a fan, I was just like, fucking A, this is all I've been asking you to do for years.
Yeah.
just bring Joey back. So the album comes out and I like it, but there are those little things. Like some of it feels a little awkward. Some of it's a little bit too middle of the road kind of stuff. But I think a good amount of it are songs that, especially as the years have gone on, like I really, really, really like songs like The Giant and even Judas Priest. Like those songs are all songs that, like, you know, I hear again and I go, yeah, this is like really fucking good. And to be honest, the big thing I like about it is Joey's voice, because his kind of matured older guy, Joey Belladonna performance, it's just, he sounds really great to me. He's one of those few singers that they don't have to play any of their songs in a lower key. Whereas when John Bush was in the band, they had to play all those old songs in lower keys. And occasionally playing songs in lower keys, I lose the fucking song. Somebody recently posted a concert that just happened, a Megadeth concert, and they're playing Hangar 18, and then they get to the end part and it shifts to like that different part with all the solos. And because it's in such a low key, I go, what fucking song is this? Like, what are they even playing? And so at that point, I'm like, just don't play the song anymore. If you got to go that low, just don't play it. So yeah, so like I like the fact that like even now, like the recent, like, you know, anniversary concert that Anthrax did, you listen to it, like they play the songs all in the same fucking key they were played back in the day, and Joey nails it in some cases better than he did in the 80s and early 90s. So I love his voice on this album, and it does have its little things that I go, it's not amazing, but it was an important album for me because I loved it when it came out, and it brought back my favorite vocalist with one of my favorite bands. And so it's got a special place in my heart, but it didn't wind up any higher than 8 because it's not perfect. So there you go. Worship music. On to our last album of part 1 of this Anthrax extravaganza. I tried to make a thing happen, and it didn't. I apologize.
Anthraxaganja.
It's like yeah, no, it's like it sounds like you go to one of those cool dispensaries that they don't have in Texas, unfortunately, because our state is fucked in several ways. But you know, you would go, can I get some of that Anthrax ganja? You know that's going to end up happening. Who doesn't have weed? Who doesn't have a weird strain of weed out there now?
Oh man, you call it the big 4 leaves, like.
Oh, I like that.
Just have like a metal band themed. But the thing is, all of the Black Sabbath references would just stay the same.
I mean, clearly, if Anthrax puts out their own weed, it's got to just be called State of Euphoria. Like,
oh yeah, smoke of Euphoria,
or Among the Stoned.
Lung full of metal.
Oh, that's pretty damn good. Smoke 442. I don't know.
Smoke 420.
Oh,
there we go. Hey,
there we go. But that you've gotten rid of so much of the actual title. People are like, what does that even mean? Smoke 420?
I mean, you could call it Stomp 420. That'd be fun.
Oh, I think I'm kind of okay with that. Anyway, all right, we digress. If Anthrax comes out with some weed and it's any of those names, I'm going to be like, those motherfuckers owe me some money. They were watching our episode. Yeah, we did the hard work for you. Number
So yeah,
seven.
number seven. Wake up, Eddie. We've come for you all is my number 7.
Sweet. Okay.
So I was pleasantly surprised with this album. It has its early 2000s hallmarks, but it doesn't fully succumb to them. So there's still a really cool groove metal done right vibe on this
Yeah.
album for me. So you get Contact, which is a hype intro to What Doesn't Die, which sounds like they've got their direction back on this album. They've 5 years, sorry, have passed since the last one, and they sound like they not so much know what they're doing, but have much more of an idea of what they want. Refuse to be Superhero, 2003 era groove metal done right. Refuse to be Denied. This is big groovy fucker, big Pantera influence on that one.
Yeah.
Safe Home is their crack at an alternative rock half ballad, and it's a good one.
Yeah.
Any Place But Here is more alt hard rock vibes.
That's
and
a
they
great
keep coming.
song too.
Yeah.
Now going through the songs in order like this, I'm all like, yeah, this album is front loaded with the best shit, and then it takes a turn, and probably about right here.
Well, here's the thing: you get Nobody Knows Anything, which is an up tempo blast of
I like that one.
Strap It On, I really like Strap It On. Gives me Alice in Chains vibes at points, and has a killer Dimebag solo in it.
Mm-hmm.
I will agree, Black Dahlia is a bit of a mess. It's groove metal with inexplicable black metal sections. It's like, it just fucking completely turns. Hey, we're doing kind of a groove metal thing. Oh, we're mayhem for the next 10 seconds. Oh, look, we're doing groove metal again. And yeah, you get Cadillac Rock Box, which is a fun song. Taking the Music Back as a tune.
That's got
Crash,
Roger Daltrey on it.
It does, which is awesome.
I want to know what that conversation was like, because they got Roger Daltrey to be in it, and he does one of his famous yells in it. I'm like how long did it take him to get the courage to be like, okay, Roger, look, we love that you're here, but everybody just wants to hear the yeah. Okay, can you do that at some point?
You get Crash, which is a interlude kind of thing. Think About the End is a fun groover, and then the title track, We've Come for You All, is a good closer. I like how this album sounds, and the songwriting on it. Granted, it does take a little bit of a dip in side B, but I think it picks up towards the last couple tracks. This is a good middle ground Anthrax album.
Sweet.
I like it a lot.
For my number 7, wrapping up this episode, we're going to remain right here in the John Bush era. My number 7 is Stomp 442 from 1995. The top of my lower half.
Cool.
So the things that you don't like about it are actually things that I do like about it. I like the fact that it feels like a very cohesive statement. They had a vision of what they wanted this album to sound like, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's not all over the place. You could say that for the John Bush era, this is the most they had a mission, and they delivered exactly this thing. I guess you could probably put Sound of White Noise in that category as well, but this one seems even more direct. Plus, it's more
direct,
like literally random acts of senseless violence into Stomp and to Fueled. Like, that is fucking insane. Like, those are just both ridiculously good songs that are heavy as fuck. And I remember when this album came out, and it was weird because it came out with like such little fanfare. Like, I don't think I saw a music video from it until YouTube years later, because it wasn't played on MTV, at least not that I saw. And it was like it just sort of came out. Like, oh, here's a new Anthrax album. Okay, cool. But even at the time, in 1995, the whole metal world was weird, not just in the what bands were doing at the time, but also in my world with all of my friends, because I was literally a kid who got into heavy music, got into metal, met all of these people that were into metal who all then decided they didn't like metal. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, what? And so by 1995, I was the only person that gave two shits that there was a new Anthrax album. And that's honestly, that's probably a big reason why I don't really have any friends now, because I'm just like, is that what happens when you have friends? You're all like, yeah, we're friends. We all like this shit. Wait, what? Why are you leaving?
Yeah.
So you could say maybe I'm very simple-minded in that way. I don't really know. But so when this album came out, I felt the same way about Anthrax, because I liked what they were doing, but I go, are they uncomfortable with being metal now? And so that's why they're doing a more of a stripped down. It's like it's like a heavy alternative kind of thing. And that bums me out when any band is like, they do some amazing shit and then they try to act like that's not really who we are. I'm like, well,
yeah,
it is who you are. But over the years, this has become an album that like is just become one that I love so much. That's why I was so pissed off when the vinyl version of it that finally came out was a complete piece of shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound awful, but it looks awful.
The packaging, they kind of shit the bed on.
Ooh, they did, and they won't acknowledge it. Nobody will acknowledge it. Anyway, but I just think this is a great album, and it's a great, if you want some heavy, aggressive shit that is pretty stripped down, and like you said, you can learn the riffs off this album pretty quick. But I just like the whole groove aspect of it, and it just it was sad at the time too, because all of a sudden Dan Spitz wasn't in the band, and I always really enjoyed what Dan Spitz brought to Anthrax to the leads and the solos and stuff. And this one once again had Paul Crook, which I feel like this is the most Paul Crook has been mentioned in anything about Anthrax ever. But he was in the band for he just didn't really, he wasn't like a full member on any recording. But it's cool. Like, it's one of those albums that just over the years has become one that I go, this is, to me, very underrated. Some people say that this is the worst thing that Anthrax put out, and I'm just like, I don't agree with that at all. But I do think it did for a time. It may not anymore, but it did fall into that category of those albums that you were supposed to think was shit for whatever reason in order to prove your cred. I have no cred, so therefore I don't care. This is a great album, and that's why it rounds out the top of my bottom half of the Anthrax ranking, Stomp 442. This has been really interesting.
Yeah,
because we're not right with each other. We're not like, there's not, because usually it almost seems like we're really, really close to each other in a whole lot of albums.
Yeah, but with like maybe the odd one inexplicably way out, But
although we both got rid of 3 John Bush albums in this lower half.
Yeah.
So clearly we agree on which one is the best John Bush album. But we'll get to that on the next episode, because we're giving this discography the attention it deserves, just because like I've said several times on this episode, they're one of my favorite bands ever. And so yeah, that's so next time it's going to be way more of a love fest for me, because I honestly, starting with Stomp 442, I don't really have any negatives about any of the albums I'm going to be talking about. The next 6 are going to be a tour de force. yeah, going to be some cool shit. So do you have any parting words for the lovely people in podcast world or in your face on YouTube before we go?
This was a really fun one, because I knew maybe 3 Anthrax albums really well, and the rest I knew like 1 or 2 songs. And upon revisiting certain ones in particular, I was like, oh shit, this is on here. I forgot how good this is. So, but I've also found a bunch of John Bush fronted stuff that I'd never heard
Yeah.
that I will be revisiting,
That's the one thing that I think is important to say about John Bush and the John Bush era of Anthrax is that sometimes that's what I'm in the mood for.
Yeah,
it's
so different.
I like the fact that they have these albums that have this different vibe. So it's almost like it's two bands depending on how you're feeling. Well, I guess even if you want to talk about the more recent Joey Belladonna, that's even more its own kind of thing, I think. But I just like the fact that sometimes I just really want to hear something from the John Bush era because that's the vibe I want.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about that. Like, even, although, comparatively speaking, these have to get ordered in some kind of way, but sometimes a John Bush album is the only thing that'll do, and that's
how I feel about like Kiss. Do I want 70s Kiss or do I want 80s Kiss?
That's absolutely true.
They both serve a purpose,
Somebody online actually just posted a Kiss concert from Austin nearby me from like a few weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
And it was from way up at the front. So I watched the majority of the thing, and I was, it was fun. They're old dudes now. But the thing that I thought was so great was that they played tracks off of 80s albums.
Yeah.
Like they didn't do anything off Hot in the Shade or even Revenge, I don't think. But they played like, Heaven's on Fire and stuff like that. And I was because like I feel like all the more recent Kiss concerts I've seen, they've totally shied away from doing any of that stuff. And so I'm like, well, that's cool. Even if you're giving me a few songs, thank you for acknowledging that music is fun.
I want to see him do My Way.
Oh shit, they gotta bust out a huge ass keyboard for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is not the Kiss ranking, but we already did the Kiss ranking, so we can't save it for. Although that one was fucking fun. We can just do that again at some point.
Well, I was thinking maybe at some point we could rank all of the Kiss live albums, seeing as they're so important to the Kiss legacy. We could do that.
That would be pretty interesting. Yeah. Which I guess it ties in a little bit because Anthrax are huge Kiss fans. Well, at least Scott and Charlie are, and
yeah,
I guess Frank is too. I don't know, but
Parasite Baby.
Yeah, they've covered a couple of Kiss songs. So there we see him saying, we went off on a tangent, but it somehow relates to what we're talking about. We're professionals, ladies and gentlemen. So don't worry, we're gonna make sure you end up where you need to be. So yes, thank you very much for listening or watching Peanut Butter Platypus to all of you out there. And yes, obviously next week will be Anthrax part 2.
The Love Fest.
Yeah, the Love Fest. So yeah, we're here in my sweet spot, especially with thrash metal. Although we didn't talk about a whole lot of thrash in this episode.
We saved it all for the next one.
Yeah, we'll get to it in the next one. But yeah, so that's it. So as usual, thank you very much for watching and listening. If you're not already subscribed to Eddie Sparxx channel, do that.
Do it.
And keep adding your comments and stuff, because we like getting the feedback, because it's nice to know that people are watching and are digging what we're doing. We got a lot of good feedback about the video version of the last episode, so that's why we're going to keep doing these on video. So yeah, that's it.
Yay! We did it! I beat you to it this time.
You did, but I wanted to hear it. I just wanted to hear it happen. I'll do my own now. Yeah, we did it! Although we should
Never
save that
more
for
the whipping boy.
We should have saved that for the next episode, because it'd be more like, yeah, we did half of it. Next time we will have did all of it. Anyway, All right, cool. So that's all we got for this episode
Cool.
of Cranked and Ranked. Thank you very much for watching. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Edward Sparxx to take us out.
Later, dude. Later, dude.
Noise.